The winter ball at Ashbourne Hall was the grandest event of the season. Every December, London's most powerful families gathered beneath the crystal chandeliers of the Duke of Ashbourne's ancestral home, dressed in silk, velvet, diamonds, and enough confidence to fill the enormous ballroom. For the aristocracy, the winter ball was not merely an evening of dancing. It was a battlefield. Marriages were negotiated over champagne. Rivalries were hidden behind smiles. Reputations could be made or destroyed by a single careless remark. And this year, everyone was waiting to see whom the Duke of Ashbourne would bring. Julian Ashbourne was 29, unmarried, wealthy beyond measure, and considered one of the most eligible men in England. He was also notorious for avoiding marriage. For 3 years, mothers had pushed their daughters toward him. For 3 years, Julian had escaped every attempt. He had danced with beautiful women, listened politely to compliments, accepted invitations to dinners, and then disappeared before anyone could suggest the word marriage. His friends called him impossible. His relatives called him foolish. His grandmother called him worse. But Julian did not care, until the afternoon of the winter ball. He stood before the tall windows of his study, staring at the snow falling across the estate, while his closest friend, Lord Edmund Carlisle, lounged in a chair behind him. "You cannot possibly intend to attend alone again," Edmund said. Julian adjusted his cufflinks. "I have done so before." "Yes, and every unmarried woman in London has spent the evening wondering whether you are secretly in love with someone." "I am not." "Then you should bring a companion." Julian turned. "I have no companion." Edmund smiled. "That is precisely the problem." Julian gave him a warning look. "Do not start." "I have already started." Edmund rose and walked toward the door. "You need a woman on your arm tonight." "Why?" "Because if you arrive alone, Lady Beatrice will corner you before the first dance." Julian sighed. And her mother will join her." Julian's expression changed. "That is unacceptable." Edmund laughed. "Exactly." Julian poured himself a drink. "I refuse to spend another evening being introduced to women who already know what they want from me." "What if you brought someone they would never expect?" Julian looked at him. "Who?" Edmund smiled. "Anyone. That is not helpful. Someone who cannot possibly be mistaken for a potential duchess." Julian considered the idea. Then, almost without thinking, he said, "A maid." Edmund stared at him. "A maid?" Julian smiled. "Yes. That is your solution. It would certainly silence everyone." Edmund began laughing. "You cannot be serious." "I am." "You would bring a servant to the winter ball." "Why not?" "Because every aristocrat in London would think you had lost your mind. Then perhaps they will finally stop trying to marry me." Edmund shook his head. "This is going to be a disaster." Julian smiled. "That makes it more interesting." Neither man knew that those words would change Julian's life. Across the estate, in a quiet servants' corridor, Clara Bennet was preparing a tray of tea. She was 24 years old. Her position was simple. She was one of the Duke's personal maids. She had worked at Ashbourne Hall for almost 2 years, after her mother became too ill to support the family. Clara had never expected anything from life except enough wages to keep her younger brother in school, and enough food to keep her mother comfortable. She knew her place. At least, that was what society had taught her. Servants did not attend balls. They did not dance with dukes. They did not sit at tables with noble families. They existed in the background. They opened doors, carried trays, prepared rooms, remembered the preferences of people who rarely remembered their names. Clara had accepted that reality long ago. She was returning from the Duke's study when she nearly collided with Edmund in the hallway. "My apologies, my lord." Edmund stepped aside. "No harm done." Clara lowered her eyes. She had learned that looking directly into the eyes of aristocrats could sometimes be interpreted as disrespect. She continued walking. Then she heard Julian's voice. "Miss Bennet." She stopped. Slowly she turned. The Duke stood in the doorway of his study. "Your Grace, come inside." Clara hesitated. "Yes, Your Grace." She entered. Julian closed the door. Clara immediately became nervous. Had she made a mistake? Had she broken something? Had someone complained? "Is something wrong, Your Grace?" "No." Then may I ask why you called me? Julian studied her. For the first time he noticed things he had never really allowed himself to notice. Her dark brown hair was neatly pinned beneath her modest cap. A few strands had escaped around her face. Her eyes were a warm hazel brown. Her expression was calm, but cautious. She stood straight despite wearing a simple gray and cream servant's dress. You are attending the winter ball tonight. Clara blinked. I beg your pardon. You will attend the ball. She stared at him. Then she gave a small nervous laugh. Your Grace, I believe there has been a misunderstanding. There has not. I am a maid. I am aware. Servants do not attend the winter ball. I am changing that rule tonight. Clara looked at him as though he had lost his mind. Why? Julian leaned against the desk. Because I require a companion. Clara's eyes widened. A companion? Yes. She shook her head immediately. No. Julian raised an eyebrow. No? I mean, Your Grace, I cannot. You can. I cannot attend a ballroom filled with noble families. Why? Because they will laugh. They will not. They will. Julian considered her. Would you rather stay here? Yes. Why? Because I know how to behave here. Something about that answer caught his attention. You believe you would not know how to behave at a ball? I know exactly how people like me are expected to behave. Julian's expression became serious. And how is that? Quietly, the word lingered between them. Julian suddenly understood that Clara was not simply afraid of embarrassing herself. She was afraid of being noticed. And he had never before considered how exhausting it must be to live in a world where being noticed could become a punishment. You will not be laughed at, he said. You cannot promise that. No. He stepped closer. But I can promise that anyone who does will answer to me. Clara looked at him. That was the first moment she realized he was not joking. Still, she shook her head. I cannot accept. Why? Because I am your maid. You are also a woman. Clara's cheeks warmed. That does not change my position. No. Julian's voice softened. But tonight, I am asking you to forget your position for a few hours. She looked away. I don't own anything suitable. I will arrange a gown. I cannot afford one. You will not pay for it. That makes it worse. Why? Because then I will owe you. Julian smiled faintly. You will owe me one dance. One dance. At most. Clara studied him. Why me? Julian paused. Because the real answer was ridiculous. He had chosen her because she was unexpected. Because bringing a maid to the ball would shock everyone. Because it would be amusing. Because he wanted to avoid marriage. But somehow, saying those things aloud suddenly felt cruel. So he simply said, because I trust you. Clara was silent. No one had ever said that to her. Not in that way. Not as though trust were something she had earned. Finally, she nodded. One evening. Julian smiled. One evening. And after that, you return to your duties. Then I accept. She turned toward the door. Miss Bennet. She stopped. Yes, Your Grace. Tonight you are not to call me Your Grace. Clara looked confused. What should I call you? Julian. Her lips parted slightly. I couldn't. You can. It would feel improper. Then perhaps you should become accustomed to being improper. For the first time Clara smiled. It was small, almost invisible. But Julian noticed it, and for reasons he could not explain, he remembered it long after she had left the room. That evening, the servants were in chaos. A gown arrived from London. It was not covered in diamonds or extravagant decorations. It was elegant, deep emerald green silk, a fitted bodice, long sleeves edged with delicate embroidery, a modest neckline, a narrow gold ribbon at the waist. Clara stared at it for several minutes. I cannot wear this. The housekeeper smiled. You can. It must cost a fortune. It is already paid for. Clara touched the fabric carefully. She had never owned anything so beautiful. When she finally changed, she hardly recognized herself in the mirror. Her hair was arranged in a simple but elegant style. Small pearl earrings were placed in her ears. Her shoes were new. For a moment, she simply stood there. Then she whispered, "This is foolish." But she was smiling. Downstairs, Julian waited beside the grand staircase. Edmund stood nearby. When Clara appeared at the top step, Edmund stopped speaking. Julian looked up, and for several seconds, he forgot why he had asked her to come. She was not transformed into someone else. That was what surprised him. She still looked like Clara. Only now, the world had been forced to see what he had overlooked. She descended slowly. Julian walked toward her. "You look beautiful." Clara lowered her eyes. "Thank you." Edmund grinned. "I believe the Duke has finally found a woman who can silence the entire ballroom." Julian gave him a warning glance. Clara looked nervous. "You can still change your mind," Julian said quietly. She looked at him. "No." "You are certain?" "No." Julian almost laughed. "That is not reassuring. I am frightened." "So am I." She looked surprised. "You?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because tonight may be more entertaining than I intended." She smiled. Then the carriage doors opened. Snow was falling softly over the estate. Julian offered his hand. Clara hesitated. Then she placed her hand in his. Neither of them realized how many eyes would soon turn toward them. The carriage carried them toward London. Inside, Clara sat opposite Julian. For several minutes, neither spoke. Finally, she asked, "What will happen when everyone discovers I am a maid?" "They already know." Her eyes widened. "They do?" "By tomorrow, everyone will." Clara swallowed. "And you do not care?" "No." "Why?" Julian looked out the window. "Because I am tired of living according to what other people expect." Clara watched him. "Perhaps we have that in common." He looked back. "Yes." The carriage continued through the snowy streets. And as the lights of London appeared in the distance, Julian had no idea that the woman he had chosen as a joke would soon become the one person in the ballroom he could not bear to see humiliated. And before midnight, he would be forced to choose between the reputation he had spent his entire life protecting and the honor of the woman he had never intended to love. The carriage stopped beneath the grand entrance of Ashbourne Hall, just as the clock struck 8. Beyond the tall iron gates, hundreds of lanterns illuminated the snow-covered gardens. Carriages arrived one after another, carrying dukes, duchesses, earls, countesses, viscounts, and wealthy families whose names had been spoken in Parliament for generations. Clara looked through the carriage window. Her confidence disappeared. "I cannot do this." Julian turned toward her. "You can. They are all looking. They will. That does not help. It is only because they are curious." "No," Clara whispered. "They are wondering why a duke has brought a maid." Julian studied her nervous expression. Then he extended his hand. "Let them wonder." Clara stared at his hand. "Come." She placed her fingers in his. The moment they stepped from the carriage, the whispers began. "Who is she?" "Is that the Duke of Ashbourne?" "Who is the woman?" "I have never seen her before." "She is certainly not from one of the great families." Julian heard every word. He ignored them. Clara tried to do the same, but when they entered the ballroom, the attention became overwhelming. Hundreds of faces turned toward them. The orchestra continued playing, but conversations faded. Julian walked beside Clara as though she belonged there. He did not rush. He did not look embarrassed. He did not release her hand, and that was what shocked everyone most. At the far end of the ballroom stood Lady Beatrice Langford. She was the daughter of an earl, and had spent the last 2 years believing that Julian would eventually marry her. Her mother had already told half of London that the engagement was practically certain. When Beatrice saw Clara, her expression froze. She approached them. "Your Grace." Julian inclined his head. "Lady Beatrice." Her eyes moved toward Clara. "And who might this be?" Julian answered without hesitation. "Miss Clara Bennet." Beatrice smiled politely. "Family?" "No." "A friend?" Julian glanced at Clara. "Yes." Beatrice's smile tightened. "How interesting." Clara lowered her eyes. Julian noticed. He leaned slightly toward her. "Would you like to leave?" "No." "Are you sure?" She looked at him. "I said I would stay." "Then stay." Beatrice watched them closely. "You seem rather comfortable with Miss Bennet." Julian smiled. "She is excellent company." Beatrice's expression became colder. "How fortunate." She turned away. Clara whispered, "She dislikes me." "She does not know you." "That has never stopped people before." Julian looked at her. "You are learning quickly." "I had a good teacher." Before he could answer, The orchestra began the first formal dance. Julian offered his hand. Clara stared at it. Now? You promised me one dance. I thought you meant later. There is no better time. She swallowed. I do not know the steps. I will guide you. There are hundreds of people watching. Then look at me. She lifted her eyes. For one brief moment, the ballroom seemed quieter. Julian led her onto the dance floor. The whispers grew louder, but once the music began, Clara discovered something unexpected. She could dance. Her mother had taught her years ago, before illness and debt had changed everything. She moved gracefully. Julian noticed immediately. You said you couldn't dance. I said I didn't know if I could dance here. He smiled. You are full of surprises. So are you. They moved beneath the chandeliers. People watched. Some were amused. Some were offended. Some were fascinated. But Clara no longer cared. Julian's hand was steady. His expression was calm. And for the first time that evening, she felt as though she truly belonged somewhere. When the dance ended, applause filled the ballroom. Not everyone applauded, but enough did. Julian led Clara from the floor. Edmund approached with an enormous grin. You have caused a scandal already. Julian looked amused. Only one. Give it time. Clara laughed. Then Edmund leaned toward Julian. Lady Beatrice is furious. She will survive. Her mother is not so certain. Neither is mine. Edmund looked at Clara. Miss Bennet, I hope you understand what you have done. Clara smiled. I believe I have danced. Edmund laughed. Precisely. A servant approached. Your Grace, Lady Ashbourne requests a word. Julian's expression changed. My grandmother? Yes, Your Grace. Julian looked at Clara. Wait here. Clara nodded. He walked toward the elderly Duchess. Lady Margaret Ashbourne stood near the fireplace, watching the ballroom with sharp eyes. She was 73 and had ruled Ashbourne Hall with an authority that frightened even Julian. You brought a maid. Julian said nothing. You brought a maid to my winter ball. Yes. Why? Because I wanted to. That is not an answer. It is the only one you are getting. Her eyes narrowed. Are you trying to insult me? No. Then stop behaving like a foolish boy. Julian sighed. She is my guest. She is a servant. She is a woman. She is beneath you. Julian's expression hardened. Do not say that again. His grandmother stared at him. You are defending her already. I am correcting you. Why? Julian looked toward Clara. She was speaking with Edmund. She seemed more relaxed now. I respect her. His grandmother followed his gaze. Respect is dangerous when it becomes attachment. Julian said nothing. Lady Margaret leaned closer. You are making a mistake. Perhaps. She will become the subject of gossip. She already is. And when society begins to question your judgment, I will answer them. His grandmother's face softened slightly. Julian, you are not a common man. Every decision you make affects this family. I know. Then behave like a duke. Julian looked at her. Perhaps being a duke does not require me to stop being a decent man. He walked away. Lady Margaret watched him go, and for the first time she looked at Clara differently. Meanwhile, Clara had moved toward a quieter corner of the ballroom. She needed air. The room was beautiful, but overwhelming. She stepped onto the terrace. Snowflakes drifted through the night. She closed her eyes. You survived. She turned. Edmund stood behind her. I believe so. You were magnificent. Everyone else seems to disagree. Everyone else is frightened. Of me? Of what you represent. Clara frowned. What do I represent? Edmund smiled. Choice. She looked at him. You are not what they expected. I never intended to be. And that makes them uncomfortable. Clara looked back toward the ballroom. I am not trying to change their world. Perhaps not. Edmund's expression became serious. But Julian is. Clara's heart skipped. What do you mean? Before Edmund could answer, a man's voice came from behind them. Perhaps the maid should remember where she belongs. Clara turned. Lord Frederick Wexford stood near the doorway. He was wealthy, arrogant, and notorious for humiliating servants when no one important was watching. Clara recognized him. She had seen him at Ashbourne Hall before. He had once snapped his fingers at a footman and called him useless. Clara remained silent. Wexford smiled. You have certainly improved your dress. Edmund stepped forward. Enough, Frederick. I am merely making conversation with someone who outranks you in decency. Wexford laughed. A servant cannot outrank anyone. Clara's face tightened. She wanted to leave. Then Julian appeared. What is happening? Wexford smiled. Nothing, Your Grace. Julian looked at Clara. She said nothing. That was enough. Lord Wexford. Yes. Apologize. Wexford stared. For what? For insulting my guest. She is a servant. She is my guest. Wexford laughed. You cannot seriously expect me to apologize to a maid. Julian's expression became cold. I expect you to apologize to the woman standing beside you. Wexford looked around. Several nobles had gathered near the terrace. He knew everyone was watching. He bowed stiffly. My apologies. Clara nodded. Accepted. Wexford walked away. Julian watched him. Then he turned toward Clara. Are you all right? Yes. You are lying. She looked at him. I am embarrassed. You have nothing to be embarrassed about. I should not have come. Julian shook his head. No. I have caused trouble. You have caused none of it. But people are talking. Let them. Clara looked at him. You truly do not care. No. She smiled faintly. Then why are you angry? Julian hesitated. Because he was cruel. That happens often. It should not. Clara studied him. You cannot fight every person who insults me. No. But you want to. Yes. She looked away. Something had changed. The man who had brought her as a joke was no longer amused. He was angry. Not because the evening had gone wrong. Because someone had hurt her. Later the ballroom grew louder. The second dance began. Clara returned inside. This time fewer people stared, but one woman approached her. Lady Eleanor Hartwell was known for her kindness. She smiled warmly. Miss Bennet. Yes. My lady? I wanted to tell you something. What? You dance beautifully. Clara smiled. Thank you. Do not let them make you ashamed. Clara's eyes softened. You are very kind. Lady Eleanor glanced toward Julian. He has never looked at anyone the way he looks at you. Clara's heart began beating faster. I think you misunderstand. Perhaps. Lady Eleanor smiled. But I rarely misunderstand Julian. Before Clara could respond, the orchestra began another waltz. Julian appeared beside her. May I? Clara looked at him. You already had your dance. I believe the rules permit more than one. She laughed. You are changing the rules. I am the Duke. That is convenient. He offered his hand. She accepted. This dance was different. There was no nervousness, no uncertainty. Their movements were effortless. Julian leaned closer. Are you enjoying yourself? Yes. Even after everything? Yes. Why? Clara looked into his eyes. Because you are here. Julian almost missed a step. Clara immediately realized what she had said. I mean, I know what you meant, but he didn't. Not anymore. The music continued. Around them, the ballroom blurred. Julian's attention remained fixed on her. The woman he had chosen as a joke had become the person whose smile he was beginning to search for in every room. And he was no longer certain he wanted the evening to end. But across the ballroom, Lady Beatrice watched them. Her jealousy had turned into something colder. She leaned toward her mother. Something must be done. Her mother frowned. Do not make a scene. I will not. Then what will you do? Beatrice looked at Clara. Something much more effective. Her mother followed her gaze. You cannot possibly intend to challenge a duke. I am not challenging him. A small smile appeared on Beatrice's face. I am going to remind everyone what she is. Near midnight, the orchestra stopped. Guests gathered around the champagne tables. Clara stepped away from Julian for a moment. She had barely reached the corridor when she heard laughter behind her. 3 young gentlemen stood near the staircase. One of them raised his glass. To the Duke's newest acquisition. The others laughed. Clara stopped. She turned. I beg your pardon. The man smiled. Surely you know what everyone is saying. No. They say His Grace brought you here because he finds the idea amusing. Clara's face went pale. The second man laughed. A maid dressed as a lady. The third added. Perhaps by morning she will be back polishing silver. Clara said nothing. She turned to leave. Then one of them stepped into her path. "Leaving already? Move," he laughed. "You have forgotten your manners." "No." Her voice was quiet. "I have simply remembered yours." The laughter stopped. Then the man reached for her wrist. Before he could touch her, another hand caught his arm. Julian. His expression was unlike anything Clara had seen before. Cold, controlled, furious. "Take your hand away." The man froze. "Your Grace, I said take it away." He released Clara immediately. Julian stepped between them. "You insulted my guest." The man swallowed. "I was only joking." "So was I." Julian's voice was dangerously quiet. "When I brought Miss Bennet tonight, I thought it would be amusing to shock society." He looked around at the watching guests. "I was wrong." Clara stared at him. Julian continued. "It is not amusing to humiliate someone simply because you believe her position makes her inferior." The ballroom had gone silent. Everyone was listening. Julian looked directly at the three men. "You will apologize." One of them immediately bowed. "I am sorry." Julian looked at the other. "And you?" "I apologize." Finally, the first man lowered his head. "My apologies, Miss Bennet." Clara looked at him. "Accepted." Julian turned away. Then he offered Clara his arm. She took it. As they walked through the silent ballroom, everyone understood something. The Duke had arrived with a maid as a joke, but now he was prepared to defend her as though her honor mattered more than his reputation. And it was only midnight. The ballroom remained silent for several seconds after Julian's warning. No one moved, no one whispered. Even the orchestra seemed uncertain whether it should begin playing again. Clara stood beside Julian, her hand resting lightly on his arm. She could feel the tension in him. His jaw was tight, his shoulders were rigid. He was trying very hard to remain composed. "Julian," she whispered. He looked down at her. "Are you all right?" "Yes." "Then we should leave." Clara shook her head. "No." His eyebrows lifted. "You want to stay?" "Yes." "Why?" She glanced around the ballroom. "Because if I leave now, they will believe I ran away." Julian stared at her. "You do not have to prove anything to them." "I know." She took a breath. "But I do not want to spend the rest of my life running whenever someone decides I do not belong." Something softened in his expression. "You are braver than most people in this room." Clara smiled faintly. "I am terrified." "You hide it well." "So do you." Julian almost smiled. Before he could respond, the orchestra began playing again. The guests slowly returned to their conversations, but the atmosphere had changed. Everyone now understood that Clara Bennet was no longer merely the Duke's amusing companion. She was someone Julian Ashbourne had publicly chosen to defend. And that made her dangerous, not because she possessed wealth, not because she possessed a title, but because the most powerful unmarried man in the ballroom had placed his reputation beside hers. Lady Beatrice understood this better than anyone. She stood near the windows, watching Julian and Clara. Her mother approached. "You should let this go." Beatrice looked at her. "Why?" "Because the Duke has made his position clear." "He has." "Then do not make an enemy of him." Beatrice's eyes remained fixed on Clara. "I am not going to fight Julian." Her mother frowned. "Then what are you planning?" Beatrice smiled. "I am going to let Clara fight herself." "What does that mean?" "Everyone has a past." Her mother understood. "You have found something?" "Not yet." "Then do nothing." Beatrice shook her head. "I have spent 3 years waiting for Julian to notice me, and now he has noticed someone else." She turned toward Clara. "I want to know why." Across the ballroom, Julian led Clara toward a quieter sitting room. She stopped at the doorway. "Why are we leaving?" "Because you need a moment." "I am fine." "You are shaking." Clara looked down at her hands. She hadn't noticed. Julian closed the door behind them. The room was warm and quiet. A fire burned in the marble fireplace. Clara stood near it. "I am sorry." Julian looked surprised. "For what?" "For causing this." "You did not cause it." If you had not come tonight, those men would have found someone else to insult." "That does not make me feel better." "It should." She looked at him. "Why?" "Because it means the problem is not you." Clara was silent. Julian moved toward the fireplace. "I should apologize." "For what?" For bringing you here for the wrong reason. She studied him. What reason? At first, yes. He hesitated. To annoy everyone. Clara laughed softly. I knew it. I wanted to stop people from pushing marriage proposals at me, and I was the perfect distraction. Yes, she nodded. At least you are honest. But I was wrong. Clara looked at him. About what? About you. She waited. Julian continued. I thought you would simply play along for one evening. I did. No. He shook his head. You did much more than that. Clara smiled. I danced. You stood in front of half of London while they judged you. She looked away. You defended me. Yes. Why? Julian stared at the fire. I don't know. Clara's heart beat faster. He turned toward her. When that man touched your wrist, I didn't think. You looked furious. I was. Why? Julian stepped closer. Because he had no right, Clara whispered. Neither did you. He stopped. What? To decide that I should come here. Julian nodded. You are right. I am not angry. I know. I am grateful. I know. But I don't want you to feel responsible for me. Julian looked into her eyes. I don't. Then what do you feel? The question surprised him. For several seconds, he said nothing. Finally, he answered. Protective. Clara swallowed. That is dangerous. Why? Because protection can become possession. Julian's expression softened. Then remind me if I ever cross that line. She looked at him. I will. Promise? I promise. They stood in silence. Then someone knocked. Julian opened the door. Edmund stood outside. We have a problem. Julian's expression changed. What happened? Lady Beatrice. What about her? She has been asking questions about Miss Bennet. Clara looked at Edmund. What kind of questions? Where you came from. Clara's face became tense. Julian noticed. Edmund, I told her nothing. Good. But she already knows something. What? Edmund looked at Clara. She knows your surname. Clara frowned. Bennet? Yes. That is hardly a secret. No. Edmund lowered his voice. She believes you are related to the Bennet family from Surrey. Clara went still. Julian noticed immediately. Is that important? Clara looked at him. I don't know. Edmund raised an eyebrow. You don't know? Clara looked away. There are many Bennets. Julian sensed that she was hiding something. But before he could question her, another servant appeared. Your Grace, the carriage for Miss Bennet is ready. Julian turned. Thank you. The servant bowed and left. Clara picked up her shawl. I should go. Julian looked at her. It is not late. It is nearly 1. I can have a room prepared. She shook her head. I am still your maid. You are my guest tonight. And tomorrow? Julian hesitated. Tomorrow you can decide. Clara smiled. That is the first sensible thing you have said all evening. He laughed. They walked toward the entrance, but as Clara passed through the corridor, she heard 2 women whispering. Did you see her? Yes. She looks exactly like. The second woman quickly silenced her. Clara stopped. Julian noticed. What is it? Nothing. But her face had changed. Clara, she looked at him. I need to leave. He did not argue. They reached the carriage. Julian helped her inside. Before closing the door, he said, I will see you tomorrow. Clara nodded. Good night, Julian. He froze. She had finally called him by his first name. Good night, Clara. The carriage disappeared into the snowy night. Julian remained outside longer than necessary. Edmund approached him. You are in trouble. Julian glanced at him. What do you mean? You know exactly what I mean. No. Edmund smiled. You are falling in love with her. Julian's expression hardened. Don't be ridiculous. I have known you for 10 years. You know nothing. I know you have never looked at a woman the way you looked at her tonight. Julian turned away. She is my employee. She was. Julian stopped. What? Edmund's smile disappeared. Think carefully. Julian looked back. What are you talking about? You cannot expect her to remain your maid after tonight. Julian said nothing. Edmund continued. If she stays, people will say you are keeping her beneath you. If she leaves, people will say she used you. Julian frowned. Then what should I do? For the first time in your life. Edmund shrugged. Ask what she wants. Julian looked toward the road where Clara had disappeared. He knew Edmund was right, and that frightened him. because he was beginning to realize that he didn't want Clara to remain merely his maid. He wanted her to remain in his life, but he had no idea what that meant. The following morning, Clara woke before sunrise. For several minutes, she lay beneath the thin blanket in her small room, remembering the previous night. The ballroom, the music, Julian's hand in hers, the insult, his anger, the way he had stood between her and the men who had mocked her. She covered her face with her hands. What am I doing? She knew she needed to return to normal. That was the only sensible thing. She dressed in her ordinary servant's uniform. She pinned her hair beneath her cap. Then she walked downstairs. The moment she entered the servants' hall, everyone looked at her. One of the younger maids smiled. Was it wonderful? Clara laughed nervously. Yes. Did you really dance with the Duke? Yes. More than once. Clara nodded. The room erupted with excitement. Another maid whispered, "Everyone in the house is talking about you." Clara's smile faded. What are they saying? That the Duke was furious when someone insulted you. Clara looked down. It was nothing. It did not look like nothing. Before Clara could respond, the housekeeper entered. "Miss Bennet." "Yes, the Duke wishes to see you." Clara's heart began racing. "Now?" "Immediately." She followed the housekeeper through the long corridor. Julian was waiting in the library. He had not slept much, she could tell. He stood beside the desk, holding a document. "Good morning. Good morning, Your Grace." His expression changed. "Not Your Grace." She smiled. "Good morning, Julian." He smiled back. "I have something for you." He handed her the document. Clara read it. Then she looked up. "What is this?" "Your new contract." "My contract. You are no longer my maid." She stared at him. "I don't understand." "I am offering you a position as companion to my grandmother." Clara looked at him in disbelief. "That is not a servant's position." "No. It is much higher." "Yes. Why?" "Because after last night, I realized something." "What?" "You deserve better than to spend your life carrying trays for people who do not know your name." Clara's expression softened. "But I have worked here honestly." "I know. I don't want charity." "It isn't charity." "Then what is it?" "A position." She read the document again. The salary was almost 3 times what she earned. Her eyes widened. "This is too much. It reflects your responsibilities. My responsibilities are not worth this. They are to me." Clara looked up. The words hung between them. She quickly looked back at the paper. "I need time to think." "Take it." She folded the document. "Thank you." She turned to leave. "Clara." She stopped. "Yes? I am going to ask you something." She waited. "Do you want to leave Ashbourne Hall?" The question surprised her. "No." "Good. Why?" He hesitated. "Because I don't want you to." Clara looked at him. For a moment neither spoke. Then she said quietly, "I don't want to leave either." She walked out before he could answer. But she did not see Lady Margaret standing at the far end of the corridor. The Duchess had heard everything, and she was beginning to understand that the winter ball had not been a harmless joke. Something real was happening between Julian and Clara, something that could threaten the family's future. Lady Margaret returned to her room and opened an old wooden chest. Inside were letters. One particular letter carried the name Bennet. She read it again. Her face became pale. So it is her. She closed her eyes. For years she had believed a certain secret was buried forever. But Clara Bennet had just walked into Ashbourne Hall, and if Lady Margaret's suspicion was correct, the young maid was not merely connected to the family. She was connected to a scandal that could destroy Julian's title. Meanwhile, Clara stood alone in the servants' corridor, unaware of what was coming. She looked at the new contract in her hands. For the first time, she had been offered a choice. Stay, leave, accept a new life, or return to the quiet existence she understood. But there was another problem. She could not stop thinking about Julian, and somewhere deep inside, she feared that the joke he had started had become something neither of them could control. For the next 3 days, Clara tried very hard to convince herself that nothing had changed. She accepted the new position as Lady Margaret's companion. She continued her duties. She attended to correspondence, helped organize the Duchess's household, read aloud when Lady Margaret's eyes became tired, and accompanied her on afternoon walks. On the surface, everything was perfectly respectable, but underneath, nothing felt the same, because now Clara no longer had to lower her eyes whenever Julian entered a room, and Julian no longer treated her as a servant. He spoke to her as an equal. That alone was enough to make the entire household notice. One morning, Clara was sitting in the library sorting letters when Julian entered. He stopped when he saw her. "You are working too hard." Clara looked up. "I am doing what I was hired to do. You were hired to accompany my grandmother, and she asked me to organize these." Julian walked toward the desk. "Then she is taking advantage of you." Clara smiled. "She is your grandmother. That does not make her innocent." From the doorway came an elderly voice. "I heard that." Julian turned. Lady Margaret stood there. "You should learn to speak more quietly." Julian smiled. "I assumed you were asleep. I am old, not deaf." Clara tried not to laugh. Lady Margaret looked at her. "Miss Bennet, leave us for a moment." Clara stood. "Yes, Your Grace." She left. The moment the door closed, Lady Margaret faced Julian. "You must stop this." Julian's smile disappeared. "Stop what?" "Pretending you do not know." "I don't." "You are becoming attached to her." Julian said nothing. Lady Margaret continued. "And that girl has no idea what she has stepped into." "What does that mean?" The Duchess walked toward the desk. "I asked you to leave her alone." "Why?" "Because there are things you do not know." "Then tell me." She hesitated. Julian's voice hardened. "Grandmother." Lady Margaret looked at him. "Her mother was not always a servant." Julian frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Clara's mother, Margaret Bennet, was raised in a respectable family." "I know." "No, you don't." Lady Margaret opened a drawer and removed an old letter. "She was once engaged to a man from a very powerful family." Julian looked at the letter. "Who?" The Duchess did not answer immediately. Then she said, "My brother." Julian froze. "You mean Uncle Robert?" "Yes." He stared at her. "My uncle was engaged to Clara's mother?" "Before he married someone else." Julian's expression changed. "Why did the engagement end?" Lady Margaret looked away. "Because the family refused to accept her." "Why?" "She had no title." "That is hardly unusual. She was considered unsuitable." Julian's voice became colder. "By whom?" "By your grandfather." Silence. Julian looked at the old letter. "And Clara?" Lady Margaret's eyes filled with sadness. "She was born several months after the engagement ended." Julian stared at her. "You are saying Clara could be—" "I do not know." "Grandmother." "I said I do not know." Julian stepped closer. "Did my uncle know about her?" "I believe he did." "Believe?" "He died before the matter could be settled." Julian's mind raced. "Why was this never told to me?" "Because your grandfather wanted the matter buried." "And Clara's mother?" "She was paid to leave." Julian's expression hardened. "Paid?" "Yes." "And she became a servant?" "Eventually." Julian looked toward the door. Clara was only a few feet away. All this time, she had believed she was simply a servant. And now there was a possibility that she was connected to his family by blood. "Why did you keep this from her?" Lady Margaret's voice softened. "Because I was afraid." "Of what?" "Of what would happen if the truth came out." Julian stared at her. "You should have told her." "I know." He turned toward the door. "Julian." He stopped. "Do not tell her yet." He looked back. "Why?" "Because we need proof. And if it is true—" Lady Margaret closed her eyes. "Then everything changes." Julian left the room. He found Clara in the corridor. She was holding a stack of books. She smiled when she saw him. "Your grandmother wants these taken to the west sitting room." Julian stared at her. "What?" She laughed softly. "You look as though you have seen a ghost." "I am fine." "You are not." He forced a smile. "I have simply had a difficult morning." Clara studied him. "Is it something I should know?" "No." The answer came too quickly. She noticed. But she did not press him. "All right." She walked away. Julian watched her go. He wanted to tell her. He wanted to warn her. He wanted to ask her about her mother. But he knew Lady Margaret was right about one thing. A suspicion was not the same as truth. and until he knew the truth, he had no right to change Clara's life again. That evening, Julian visited his uncle's old estate records. He searched through boxes for hours. Most were useless: invoices, land agreements, letters from Parliament, business records. Then he found a small leather journal. It belonged to Robert Ashbourne. Julian opened it. The entries were brief, private, personal. Most were meaningless, until he reached a date 25 years earlier. Margaret says her family will never accept this. Another entry followed. I cannot abandon her. Then, the child is mine. I know she is. Julian's heart stopped. He turned the page. Father has ordered me to end everything. He says the child will bring disgrace upon Ashbourne. I refuse. The next page had been torn out. Julian searched desperately. Nothing. Then, at the bottom of another page, he found one final sentence. If anything happens to me, the proof is with Margaret Bennet. Julian closed the journal. He had found enough. Clara might be his cousin. But there was more. If Robert had been Clara's father, then the woman Julian had brought to the winter ball as a joke was not simply a maid. She could be the hidden daughter of an Ashbourne heir. The discovery was shocking. But Julian's feelings frightened him even more, because the possibility did not make him want Clara gone. It made him want to protect her even more, and he knew how dangerous that was. The next morning, Julian sent a discreet messenger to find Margaret Bennet. The messenger returned that afternoon. She has left the village. Where did she go? No one knows. Julian's frustration grew. He returned to the library. Clara was there. She was reading a book beside the fire. May I ask you something? She closed the book. Of course. Your mother. Clara's expression changed. What about her? Where was she born? Clara looked confused. In Surrey. Do you know her family? Some. Did she ever speak about my family? Clara stared at him. Your family? Yes. No. Never? She disliked discussing the past. Why? I don't know. Julian sat opposite her. Did she ever mention Robert Ashbourne? Clara's face went completely still. After a long pause, she said, Why are you asking me that? Julian knew he had gone too far. I found an old record. What record? One that mentioned her name. Clara stood. You are lying. He looked at her. I am not. My mother always said the Ashbournes were people she never wanted to discuss. Why? I don't know. Clara's voice trembled. But now I think perhaps I should have asked. Julian stood. Clara. She looked at him. Do you think my mother knew your family? I think she may have. Clara's eyes filled with uncertainty. Why would you hide something like that? I am trying to understand it myself. She shook her head. You always protect me from the truth. I am trying not to hurt you. You cannot decide what hurts me. Julian fell silent. She was right. He had spent the last few days making decisions for her. Again. He took a breath. I am sorry. Clara looked at him. Then she whispered, I want the truth. You will have it, no matter what it is, no matter what. That night, Julian told her everything he had discovered. Not the entire truth. He did not yet have enough evidence. But he told her about Robert, about the engagement, about the possibility that her mother had been connected to the Ashbourne family. Clara listened without speaking. When he finished, she walked toward the window. So my mother may have been part of your family. Yes, and no one told me. I am sorry. She turned. Why? Because I should have known. You were not alive when it happened. That does not matter. She shook her head. It matters to me. Julian looked at her. I don't want this to change how you see yourself. Clara laughed bitterly. How could it not? You are still Clara, am I? Yes. What if I am not a maid? You were never only a maid. She stared at him. The words affected her more than he intended. What am I, then? Julian took a step toward her. You are the woman who walked into a ballroom filled with people determined to humiliate you, and stood taller than all of them. Clara looked away. You make me sound stronger than I am. I think you are stronger than you know. Silence settled between them. Then Clara whispered, Why did you bring me to that ball? Julian knew the question would come eventually. Because I wanted to make a joke. She nodded. I know. I regret it. Why? Because I didn't understand what I was doing. She looked at him. And now, Julian's voice softened. Now I cannot imagine that night without you. Clara's breath caught. Neither moved. The fire crackled behind them. Julian took one step closer. Clara, she looked into his eyes. I don't know what is happening between us. Neither do I. But I know I don't want to lose it. She lowered her eyes. Neither do I. For a moment the distance between them seemed to disappear. Then footsteps sounded in the hallway. They stepped apart. Lady Margaret entered. Her face was pale. I found her. Julian turned. Who? Your mother? No. Lady Margaret looked at Clara. Your mother. Clara's heart stopped. She is alive? Yes. Where? Lady Margaret held out a letter. She sent this to me 20 years ago. Clara took it with trembling hands. The envelope carried her mother's handwriting. She opened it. Inside was a short message. If Clara ever comes to Ashbourne, tell her the truth. Clara looked up. What truth? Lady Margaret's eyes filled with tears. She is Robert Ashbourne's daughter. Clara stopped breathing. Julian stared at his grandmother. You are certain? Lady Margaret nodded. I have known for years. Clara looked at the letter again. My father was your uncle. Yes. And you knew? Yes. Why did you never tell me? Lady Margaret's voice broke. Because your grandfather threatened your mother's life if she ever revealed the truth. Clara stepped backward. For 24 years, she had believed she was ordinary. A servant. A woman without a name powerful enough to protect her. Now she had discovered that she was the hidden daughter of the Ashbourne family. But that was not the only revelation. Lady Margaret reached into her pocket and removed another letter. There is something else. Julian took it. He read the first line. Then his expression changed. What? Clara looked at him. What does it say? Julian slowly raised his eyes. It says your father intended to acknowledge you. Then why didn't he? Lady Margaret answered. Because he died before he could. Clara's eyes filled with tears. And your family hid me. Yes. She looked toward Julian. Did you know? Not until tonight. She believed him, but that did not make the pain disappear. She turned toward the door. Clara. She stopped. I need to be alone. Julian nodded. All right. She walked away. He did not follow. For the first time he understood that protecting Clara did not mean standing between her and every painful truth. Sometimes it meant letting her face the truth herself. But outside the room, someone else had heard everything. Lady Beatrice stood hidden behind the corridor curtain. She had come searching for gossip. Instead, she had discovered something far more powerful. Clara Bennet was an Ashbourne by blood. And if that secret became public, the entire structure of London's aristocracy would change. Beatrice smiled. Now she knew exactly how to destroy the woman standing between her and the Duke. But she did not yet know that exposing Clara's identity could destroy the Ashbourne family as well. And by morning, the secret would no longer belong to them. By sunrise, the secret was already spreading through Ashbourne Hall. Clara had barely slept. She sat beside the window in her room, staring at the pale winter sky while her mother's letter rested unopened on the table. She had read it twice, then 3 times. Every sentence seemed impossible. Her father had been Robert Ashbourne, a member of the very family whose name had been kept from her. A family that had allowed her mother to disappear. A family that had allowed Clara to grow up believing she was nothing more than a servant. She touched the old paper carefully. For years she had wondered why her mother became quiet whenever Clara asked about her father. Now she understood. There had been a secret behind every silence. A secret powerful enough to frighten an entire family. A knock came at the door. Clara quickly wiped her eyes. Come in. Julian entered. He stopped when he saw her expression. I should have waited. No. She stood. I am glad you came. He closed the door. How are you? I don't know. That is fair. She looked toward the letter. Did your family really do this? Julian did not answer immediately. My grandfather did. And everyone else? My grandmother knew. Did your father know? No. And you? I knew nothing. Clara looked at him. I believe you. He seemed relieved. Then she asked, what happens now? Julian walked closer. That depends on what you want. She smiled sadly. You keep saying that. Because it is true. What if I don't know what I want? Then we wait. Clara looked at him. You would wait. As long as necessary. Her eyes softened. I never expected a duke to be patient. I never expected a maid to tell me what to do. She laughed quietly. For the first time since learning the truth, she felt something like normal again. Then the door opened. Lady Margaret entered. Her expression was serious. We have another problem. Julian turned. What happened? The Earl of Wexford has arrived. Julian frowned. At this hour? He requested an immediate audience. Clara's face tightened. Why? Lady Margaret looked at her. Because he knows. Silence. Knows what? Clara asked. Everything. Julian's expression became cold. How? Lady Margaret looked toward the window. I believe Lady Beatrice told him. Julian's jaw tightened. Of course. Clara swallowed. What will he do? Lady Margaret answered quietly. He will use the truth against you. Julian looked at Clara. He will not. But Lady Margaret shook her head. You do not understand. If Wexford makes this public, he can claim that the Ashbourne family concealed an heir. Julian frowned. She is not an heir. Perhaps not legally. Lady Margaret's voice lowered. But the scandal would be enormous. Clara looked at them. Why would he care? Because the Wexfords have been trying to weaken our family for years. Julian understood immediately. He wants the Ashbourne seat. Lady Margaret nodded. And now he has found the perfect weapon. Clara stood. Then I should leave. Julian turned sharply. No. If I leave, the scandal disappears. No. Julian. I will not let you run away because someone threatened you. I am not running. You are. She looked at him. Then what should I do? Stay. Why? Because you have done nothing wrong. But your family. My family made the mistake. His voice softened. You should not have to pay for it. Clara stared at him. Then she nodded. All right. Downstairs, the Earl of Wexford waited in the library. He was a tall man in his 50s with silver hair and an expression that suggested he had never apologized for anything in his life. When Julian entered, Wexford smiled. Your Grace. Wexford. I believe we have much to discuss. I believe you have 5 minutes. Wexford laughed, still arrogant, still unpleasant. Wexford's smile disappeared. I know about the girl. Julian remained calm. What girl? Do not insult my intelligence. You came here before breakfast to discuss a servant. She is not a servant. Julian's expression changed. Wexford smiled. So you admit it. I admit nothing. You should have been more careful. What do you want? Her. Julian stared at him. What? I want Clara Bennet removed from Ashbourne Hall. No. Then the truth becomes public. Go ahead. Wexford looked surprised. You are willing to risk everything. Julian stepped closer. You are forgetting something. What? I have spent my entire life protecting this family. He paused. But I will not protect it by sacrificing an innocent woman. Wexford narrowed his eyes. Then you will lose your title. Julian smiled. Perhaps. Wexford stared. You don't believe me. I believe you would like me to believe you. Wexford's expression hardened. By tomorrow evening, every newspaper in London will know that your family concealed an illegitimate daughter. Julian's face remained calm. Then let them print it. Wexford turned toward the door. You are making a mistake. No. Julian's voice was cold. I am finally making the right decision. Wexford left. But Julian knew the threat was real. He returned to the drawing room. Clara was there with Lady Margaret. What happened? Clara asked. He wants you gone. She lowered her eyes. I expected that. He threatened to expose the family. Will he? Yes. Then you should let me leave. Julian shook his head. No. Why? Because I refuse to allow a man like him to decide your future. Clara looked at him. And what if staying destroys yours? Julian stepped closer. Then I will rebuild it. She stared at him. You really mean that? Yes. Lady Margaret watched them silently. She had spent decades believing that family reputation mattered more than anything. Now she was watching her grandson prepare to risk everything for a woman the family had once considered beneath them. Perhaps, she thought, this was the justice they had avoided for too long. That afternoon, the scandal broke. A newspaper arrived at Ashbourne Hall. The headline was brutal: Mystery of the Ashbourne Heir. Duke hides family secret. Clara read the article. Her hands trembled. It described her mother's disappearance. It described Robert Ashbourne's secret relationship. It suggested that Clara was the rightful heir to an enormous fortune. And worse, it claimed that Julian had deliberately brought Clara to the winter ball to manipulate the scandal for his own amusement. Clara looked up. "They have made me look like a liar." Julian took the newspaper. His face hardened. "They have made us both look like fools." "Why would they say you used me?" "Because it makes the story more interesting." She shook her head. "No." "What?" "Because people will believe it." Julian looked at her. "I don't care, but I do." She turned away. "I cannot spend my life being known as the woman who trapped a duke." "You did not. I know. But the world may not." Clara's voice broke. "I don't want your name destroyed because of me." Julian stepped closer. "Clara," she looked at him, "you are not destroying my name." "What am I doing?" "You are giving me a reason to use it." She stared at him. He took her hand. "I spent years protecting the Ashbourne name because I thought it was all I had." He paused. "Now I know it is not." Clara whispered. "What do you have?" He looked into her eyes. "You." She froze. Julian realized what he had said, but he did not take it back. "I don't know when it happened," he continued. "Perhaps at the ball, perhaps before that, but somewhere between the first dance and the moment I defended you, I stopped thinking of you as a joke." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "And what do you think of me now?" Julian answered quietly. "The woman I cannot imagine losing." She looked down. "I am afraid." "So am I." "What happens if this destroys everything?" "Then we face it together." Clara looked at him. "Together? Yes." For the first time she did not pull her hand away. But outside the room, Lady Margaret stood with another letter. She had just received confirmation from a solicitor in Surrey. The proof of Clara's parentage was genuine. And there was one more detail. A detail that could change everything. She entered the room. "Julian." He turned. "What is it?" Lady Margaret looked at Clara. "The solicitor has confirmed your father's identity." Clara's heart raced. "Robert?" "Yes." She closed her eyes. Lady Margaret continued. "But there is something else." Julian frowned. "What?" "Robert left a legal document." "What kind?" "A declaration." Clara looked confused. "Declaration of what?" Lady Margaret handed the paper to Julian. He read it. His eyes widened. "What?" Clara stepped closer. Julian looked at her. "Your father legally acknowledged you." Clara's breath caught. "What does that mean?" "It means you are not merely his daughter by blood," Lady Margaret answered. "You were named in his will." Clara stared at them. "What did he leave me?" Lady Margaret's voice was quiet. "His personal estate." Clara's eyes widened. "How much?" "A considerable fortune." Silence filled the room. The woman who had spent her life worrying about rent, food, and medicine for her mother had just inherited wealth she had never known existed. But Clara did not smile. Instead, she looked at Julian. "I don't want this." "Why?" "Because it feels like another life I never asked for." Julian took her hand. "You do not have to become someone else." She looked at him. "Will you still see me as Clara?" "Always. Even if I am wealthy." "I didn't fall in love with your money." She froze. He had said it, the word neither of them had dared speak. Love. Julian realized it too. He took a slow breath. "I love you." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "You shouldn't." "Why?" "Because your family hates me." "My family is learning. Society will never accept me." "Then society will have to learn." "And your title?" "I would give it up before I gave you up." Clara shook her head. "No." "What?" "I don't want you to give up everything. Then stay beside me." She looked at him. "I don't know how to be a duchess." Julian smiled. "Neither do I know how to be a husband." Her lips trembled into a smile. "You are asking?" "Yes. After everything." "Especially after everything." Clara looked down at their joined hands. Then she whispered, "Yes." Julian stared at her. "Yes. Yes." He smiled. Not the confident smile of a duke, Not the teasing smile of the man who had brought a maid to a ball as a joke. It was the smile of a man who had finally found something worth more than reputation. But their happiness lasted only moments. A servant rushed into the room. "Your Grace." Julian turned. "What happened?" "The gates are surrounded." "By whom?" "Reporters." Julian's expression hardened. "How many?" "Dozens." The servant swallowed. "And there is another problem." "What?" "The Earl of Wexford has brought legal officers." Julian looked at Clara. The moment had arrived. Their secret was no longer a secret, and now the entire world was about to discover who Clara Bennet really was. But Julian took her hand. "You wanted the truth." She nodded. "Then let them heave."